Okay, I got to put my timer on because I'm from Cape Breton and I do tend to rant on. Us East Coast people tend to do that, so. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris Cochrane. I am from Jubuktuk, Halifax, commonly known as Halifax. I'm also from Unama'ki, which is commonly known as Cape Breton. I am also a descendant of Loyalists, and my grandmother, who I talked about and said Mary, her name is Mary Catherine McLean, was one of the last children in the School for Colored Children, and we can trace her heritage right back to the Loyalists. As well, I'm part of where the first designated landing spot for black slaves in Nova Scotia, known as Africville. I have been helping with that as well. So I'm here a little bit to talk to you about, well, allyship, being black, being trans, the dumpster fire that the world is in right now, and how much more that we need to do to make sure that everybody is feeling safe in who they are. So first, I'd like to talk about some of our black trans elders and entrepreneurship. Marsha P. Johnson and Silva Rivera were one of the first two people that were an entrepreneur. They started an organization called Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. And unfortunately, over time, they were pushed out of that whole organization because they believed that trans people should not exist in those. That has been happening time and time and time again, where black trans women start a community or start a organization, and then they are pushed out from that said community because they believe that trans people should not be. There's organizations called the LGBT group, and I'm pretty sure you have seen it here in Alberta with your lovely Marlena Smith. I will not call her by her stage name, Danielle Smith. I will call her by Marlena Smith because that's what her actual name is. This is a problem that we've had over and over again, where trans people and trans women of color have come into spaces to make those spaces better and to make them equitable, but then obviously after time it is taken over and then it is white cast and then they are pushed out of the community. I myself have been subject to, unfortunately, some of those things within my own community in Halifax, where I have started things and then people have taken over and then have started to push me out because they don't believe that trans people should exist in that community. The stats about black trans women, especially trans women of color in North America, is kind of staggering. I, at 40 years old, am a trans elder in my community. I should not be able to say that, but the average expectancy rate, well, last year it was 35. The average expectancy rate of a trans woman of color in North America is now 32 years old, which means I, right now, am 8 years past my expectancy rate. So when we're talking about entrepreneurship, we don't even get to the point where we start to be able to actually own businesses, start to become entrepreneurs, or start to become, because we don't live past the date that most people start to have those. We don't get accepted into those rooms. It's only as of recently that we've started to see trans women of color and trans people being not only accepted in spaces, but being allowed to come and speak about those spaces in those in places like today. I, as a black trans woman, put everything at my forefront, and I make sure that we and people understand that us trans women of color are the reason why a lot of these things are happening. As for tonight, we're doing a ball tonight, and I really wish that I had known, because I would have brought every bit of drag that I had with me. I still will attend, though. Don't worry, I bring some wigs. We'll deal with it later. But the problem is that we are pushed out of things. I like to say Canada has this thing called polite ignorance. It's a term that I've coined, where we like to pretend that we don't have homophobia, transphobia, racism, misogyny, and all those things. And if we don't have them, they're not as bad as our southern border people. I can tell you, as a trans black woman of color who is also a plus-size drag queen, believe me, we have them, and we have them in spades, as you've seen with Marlena, as we've seen with what the bills that they are trying to pass right now, and as we're seeing all over Canada. Everything is leaching into our world, and we cannot ignore it anymore. But the problem is that I get told all the time, well, you're in Canada, at least you get to live your life. Being able to live should not be a reason for me to be excited. Me reaching the age of 40 should not have been such a celebration for me because I'm a trans woman of color. Being able to stand up here and speak to you should not be a celebration, because I believe that we are sometimes pushed out and not allowed to have a seat at the table. But I work with a lot of trans youth, and I tell them, if you are not allowed to have a seat at the table, flip the table, take up the space, grab the hand behind you, and make sure that space is held for years to come. Now, entrepreneurship. I, myself, have been an entrepreneur for over 20 years, as you heard. I've been a drag performer for 20 years, and I've been on many of things, television, film, all those different things. But really what I do is a lot of DEI work. I've worked with organizations such as Irving, believe me, it was tedious work teaching steel workers trans inclusion in the workplace. I've been asked everything from, can trans women have orgasms, to what eyeshadow I'm wearing. Yes, and Morphe. But the problem is that after I was leaving these corporate spaces, they were reverting back to what they were before. So my new platform now is that if I come into you, I'm going to check on you throughout the year. And if I believe that you are not using the practices that I have used and I've put forward towards you, I will call you out publicly. So Irving, I'm calling you out publicly right now. And I have to watch what I'm doing because my husband still works there. But still. This is the problem that we're seeing, is that we are being used as a Band-Aid or using as a check mark. I do not mind educating, but I will not debate my existence, and that is what a lot of these organizations want to do. They want to just have us here to make sure that they are checking off something, that they can get the right funding, or they can get the right people, or they can get into the right rooms so they can exploit our organizations and our community. As an entrepreneur myself, I have been an educator, I have been a performer, I've been a public speaker, and I use my intersectionality, which is my favorite word, as being a black trans woman and a keen black trans woman to make sure that I am in the spaces. I like to talk to people about organic and gap diversity. Now, when I'm talking about gap diversity, you know those gap commercials where you see the one black person, the one indigenous person, the one white person, and everybody just looks happy and friendly like they're on a cast of Saved by the Bell. But when I walk into spaces, I now look for authentic diversity. So when I walk into a space, I look for people that are queer. I look for people that are people of color. I look for indigenous people. Are they being represented right? Because unfortunately, we are still very tokenized, and we are being tokenized even within our own communities and within our own spaces. So when we are talking about entrepreneurship, it is hard for us to be in spaces that we are not accepted and only seeing during 4 times during the year, during Black History Month, during Indigenous Month, during Pride Month, and then for some reason, again, during Christmas, they want to talk to all the trans people. I don't know, maybe it's Mary or something, I don't know. But the problem is intersectionality, being black, and then also being a person of color, and then being a woman, and then being a trans woman. Sometimes when you're looking for funding, you can put one of those things on, or you can belong to a group that has one of those things. But somebody who is like me, who can't take off their transness to be black, or take off their blackness to be trans, or take off their black and transness to be a woman, you know, I can't take all those off. And unfortunately with entrepreneurship, sometimes we're pigeonholed into different things that we are put forward and basically colonized into spaces to make sure that we are staying in line. But as I'm seeing in this room, we are very much not colonized, and we are very much not into pigeonholed spaces. We have to make sure that we are living for our example. I also say that allyship should be a verb and not just a noun, because we are seeing a lot of nouns. We are seeing a lot of people putting allyship. We see it all during Pride Month when we have all of these rainbows and stickers, and then the rest of the year they have no idea what we're doing. I host a drag brunch every second week in Halifax, so if you're ever there, it's called Stardust, come see me. But what I talk about is allyship and true allyship, being that verb, making sure that you're taking that and moving it forward. Not just saying that you're showing up for people. You should not have to say that you're an ally. You should be able to show that you're an ally, because if you're not showing that you're an ally, you're only doing half of the work. So, A little history about me. I am from Cape Breton, a small little town named Glace Bay. I am also a ex-Navy, so I was in the Navy for 5.5 years. I have been to 27 different countries performing in drag. I have also been an educator. I am a grandmother of 5. And I'm an educator, public speaker, and worker. The only thing that I don't do is sleep. But the problem that I've been having lately is that I feel like I'm screaming into a void. And that void is not necessarily just a physical space, but it sometimes is a mental space. Because I feel like even though we're putting our foot forward and we're having wonderful things like this, we're still having to make sure that we are just existing. When we're having people that are passing bills to make sure that we don't exist, when we have people that say, oh, I'm just not into politics, that is saying that you have the privilege that you do not have to worry about the outcome of those politics. So therefore, you're not being able to put forward and understand the plight that we are also going through in our own lives. I also like to talk about silence equals permission equals violence. Now I'm going to repeat that. Silence equals permission equals violence. But what I'm saying is that allyship that comes within, by just remaining silent and allowing people to believe that you agree with them even though you're not agreeing with them, you're allowing that permission to behave and to continue, which will come back as violence towards me. I have seen it in my whole life where people who say they accept me, but they don't want to put it out because it is not their place. It is always your place to stand up for transphobia, homophobia, misogyny, racism, Islamophobia, and all of it in consigned. If you have a phobia, if you want to stand up for arachnophobia, I suggest you to do so, because it is understandably something that people need to understand. I like to interject a little bit of comedy into my things because now I'm about to say a few things that are not so funny. In 2011, I had a knock on my door, and it was people that did not like that there was a trans black woman in their community, and I was shot through the door. I suffer from PTSD because I was shot in the arm, which I had 11 stitches and 36 sutures. But silver lining is sometimes I lose feeling in my hand, so if I slap someone, they'll feel it and I won't. I suffer from PTSD. I'm also autistic, so having a whole bunch of people staring at me is really weird. I know I went into a weird business being a person that's up talking in front of people. But I think my strength is my autism because I love research. So if you do something wrong to me, I'm going to research everything about you. So make sure that you're just making good friends with me. That's all I have to say. Ask my husband. With all this being said is that the world is scary, the world is horrible. But the problem that we have in our own community is that we are not looking out for ourselves. We call ourselves the queer community, but unfortunately sometimes that community is having sectors. We have the LGBT people who don't believe that trans people should exist. We have trans elitists who believe that trans people should have surgeries or should change their appearance to be who they are. We have people that believe that non-binary people should not exist. We have racists. I'm sure you heard of the no fats, no femmes, no Asians type of things. I believe that if you are going to be part of this community, then you need to be part of the whole community, because you are not putting forward something that is going to give you all of the freedom that our community has, but then turn your back on those said freedoms when it comes to somebody else. Therefore, if you are part of the queer community, you should be standing up for genocide in Sudan and also in Palestine. If you are part of the community, you should be standing up for your trans community. If you are part of the community, you should be standing up for our indigenous people, that this is still and always will be their land. As a racialized folk, I don't get to remove myself. I do understand that I do have privilege. Most people, unless I tell them that I'm trans, they don't know. So I have that privilege. But the problem is that I went from being a black man to being a black trans woman. So now I can't get angry because all of a sudden I'm the angry black woman. I have trans people that don't think that I should be talking like the way I'm talking. I should be a lot louder and a lot angrier. Believe me, I am a lot louder and a lot angrier, but THC and 40-year-old have kind of softened me over the time. So I'm able to talk, as I like to say, to the colonizers. I believe that we need to make sure that we are making it a safe space, not just for anybody, but for everybody. We have to make sure that the safe space is not just being said, but also being enacted. Because sometimes we'll walk into a space and I automatically know, even though it's a queer space, I am not accepted in there, or I'm tokenized in there, or I'm being used as a pedestal, so therefore they can get that ever so loving check mark. We have to make sure that we are holding each other accountable, that we're, when we hear our other friends and our family saying stuff such as, oh, I didn't know they were trans, or, oh, she is such beautiful for a black girl, or, I do like that trans people are in the community, but I don't believe drag queens should be reading to children because we should not be forcing it upon children. As somebody who speaks and works with trans youth, I'm going to tell you right now, they know a lot more about our community than most of the people that might be in this room right now. And the reason that they have so much fear in them is because they do know more. Because they know where they're coming from. They now have technology that is allowing them to understand all of the problems that they had in the past are still here today. With Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera starting in STAR, and then unfortunately Marsha P. Johnson passing away, and then Sylvia Rivera, there's that famous video of Sylvia Rivera standing up on stage saying that, I just want to help you, but you will not allow me to be part. And she's being booed off the stage. Those people that were booing her off the stage got to where they are and got those rights because of that woman they were booing off a stage. And they need to understand the history, and they need to understand where everything is coming from. I belong to a lot of organizations and a lot of communities and a lot of things, and there's a lot of talking, but unfortunately there's still not a lot of action. And if there's not action, then you're only doing half the job, and I'm tired of just getting half of the job. I'm tired of being blue-balled by our community. So, in closing, I just want to say, when you're doing your allyship, make sure that you're doing it for everybody. Make sure you're understanding. Make sure that you're making sure that all of you are feeling safe in the space. Speak up about it. Allow others to know, because it is your space and it is your voice that is going to make a change. Small little voices. A little black boy from Cape Breton is now standing in front of you as a beautiful black trans woman and able to speak her truth. When I started doing this a long time ago, I never expected that people would ask me to come and just speak about how my life is going and how my life is changing lives. I'm going to leave you with two stories that I always end all of my presentations with. In 2019, I was a Pride ambassador for Halifax Pride, and I got to go to small little prides around Nova Scotia. And I was in this long dress that was all trans colors, and out of the audience I heard, I'm trans too. And I turned around and it was this little 10-year-old black girl. And her family said that was the first time outside of her family that she ever said that she was trans, because she not only saw a representation of herself, but she saw the adult representation of herself. The other story, oh, and she's a cheerleader. She got highlights last year. She doesn't like them, but she's doing well now. The other story is my nephew. Now, if you saw my nephew, the joke in our family is now I will know what I look like if I didn't transition, because it looks like I gave birth to this child. I was talking to him, and he said that he had two people that he was, interested in. One was a girl. The other one was a non-binary person. And after I got off of that call with him, I cried for 20 minutes, and I didn't know why. And then I realized the reason I cried for 20 minutes is because I saw the visual representation of everything that I am doing, and my little self telling me something as nonchalant as being with a non-binary person that was so perfect and so poignant. It brought me to where I need to. And in that moment, I realized it didn't matter if I was a Black trans woman, I was where I needed to be and where my voice needed to be and where it needed to continue. So I want to say thank you so much for having me all the way from Nova Scotia, and I hope that you have a wonderful conference, and thank you again.